You're listening to a special bonus episode of the Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans. Welcome to my round of 64 preview here on the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk. And as promised, I'm going to go through all the games in the round of 64. I'm going to go chronologically. I'm not going to waste any time. Let's get right into it. The first game to talk about is Virginia Tech, Florida. When you look at the Hokies, they've stifled teams all year. Mike Young's team has the 55th best defense in the nation in terms of points against per game. They've only given up 65.5 points per game. Their offense is solid, not great, not terrible. Keve Aluma, Tyrese Radford, and Naheem Lane are solid players. Aluma I would put ahead of solid. I'd say he's really good. Very good two-way player. Justin Mutz is an okay player. No Jalen Cone, though, could hurt the Hokies. That is something to watch out for. And the Gators know something about devastating injuries. Keontae Johnson, their best player, only played in 4 games this year. So other Gators, guys like Trey Mann, Colin Castleton, Tyree Appleby, and Noah Locke have had to step up. They are very good scorers. Michael White's team is a very well-rounded team. I like that they didn't keel over and die after the Johnson injury. But the thing that I don't like for the Gators is their chances of beating this really good Virginia Tech defense. It is a stifling defense. They make life very difficult for every team they go up against. I don't think Florida has the players necessary to beat that defense. If they had Keontae Johnson, yeah, that would bode well for him. But those other guys, I'm not convinced. I'm going to go with Virginia Tech. Moving on now to Arkansas Colgate. I don't know what the over-under is on this game, but take the over. Because these are two of the best offenses in the nation. The Razorbacks have scored 82.4 points per game this year. And the Raiders have scored 86.3 points per game. This is going to be a shootout of epic proportions. I haven't talked about Arkansas a lot. They just never came up, but I should have found a way to mention them. I am really high on this Arkansas team. They have some of the best two-way players in the nation in Moses Moody, J.D. Notae, Justin Smith, and Jalen Tate, Desi Sills, Devontae Davis, and Connor Vanover are also solid two-way players. They've got a really good bench anchored by Notae. They're a deep team. They go 9 deep. Watch out for the Razorbacks. And they also have a very underrated coach in Eric Musselman. Has some NBA experience, some college experience, doesn't get the credit that he should. And you can say the same thing for Matt Langle. He's been with Colgate for a long time. In Langle's first 7 years, the Raiders never even sniffed March Madness. Then in the last 3 years, they've made March Madness in all of them except, obviously, last year. I think they would have made the tournament if the coronavirus never happened. So, give Langle credit. He finally seems to be on the right track with the Raiders. They have a lot of guys that are capable of shooting the lights out. Jordan Burns, Jack Ferguson, Nelly Cummings, and Tucker Richardson all shot better than 36% from beyond the arc this year, and all averaged over 11 points. They have the interior presence in Keegan Records. Look, I'll say this. In a game like this, a game that's going to be an offensive explosion, both teams have a solid chance of winning. You can't just write Colgate off. But having said that, there's no question that Arkansas has the better team. They have the best player in Moses Moody. They're deeper than Colgate. Yes, you'll be amazed at the number of points that the Raiders put up, but Arkansas will put up more. Give me the Razorbacks. Moving on now to Illinois Drexel. I've spoken glowingly about the Illini all year. I love Iodo Sonmu and Kofi Coburn. I think those two guys form one of the best duos in the nation. I like their supporting cast in Trent Frazier, Andre Curbelo, and Adam Miller. This is a very well-rounded Illinois team. Give Brad Underwood a ton of credit. He has Illinois playing better than they've ever played before. And that includes when Darren Williams was there. All due respect to Drexel, I don't want to rain on their parade. This is their first March Madness appearance since 1996. But there's no chance on earth that they beat Illinois. Cameron Winter, James Butler, TJ Bickerstaff, and Zach Walton are all solid players. They're all big reasons why Drexel shocked the CAA by winning their conference tournament. But they're no match for Illinois. I understand UMBC. The simple fact is that's 1 in a million. More often than not, these 1/16 matchups end in blowouts. And I think you're going to see that here. Moving on now to Texas Tech, Utah State. You remember how earlier I intimated that Arkansas and Colgate are very similar because they're both offensive powerhouses? The same holds true in this matchup, except on the defensive side of things. Texas Tech has one of the best defenses in the nation. We all know this. It's how they got to the title game in 2019. Terrence Shannon, Kevin McCullough, Kyler Edwards, Marcus Santos Silva, and Amari Burnett are all really good defenders. And with Mac McClung leading the way, you'd think that would be a tough team for Utah State to beat, right? I don't think so. I think the Aggies match up incredibly well with the Red Raiders. I love what Craig Smith has done with the program. Part of what makes McClung great is his driving ability, his ability to get inside for layups, mid-range jumpers, whatever. He's not going to be able to do that in this game. Neemias Keita is one of the best interior players in the nation. He has dominated the Mountain West Conference for 3 seasons. He averaged 15.1 points per game, 10 rebounds per game, and 3.2 blocks per game. And outside of him, Utah State has a very potent starting 5. Justin Bean, Marco Anthony, Raleigh Worcester, and Brock Miller. They're all very solid players. If Texas Tech is going to win this game, it's got to be because of Kyler Edwards. He is the Red Raiders' best shooter, and the Aggies aren't a great perimeter defense team. But all due respect to Edwards, I don't trust him to win a game by himself. I think McClung is going to be limited. I think Shannon is going to be limited. This is a game that the Aggies can win. I'm going with the upset here. Give me Utah State. Moving on now to OSU versus Oral Roberts. When's the last time a March Madness game happened with 2 schools going at it that both had O as the first letter in their program's name? I don't know the answer to that. On paper, these teams are evenly matched. They both have really good offenses and not so good defenses. But the thing that's going to play in the Buckeyes' favor here is their depth. OSU has 5 guys that scare me offensively. Dwayne Washington, E.J. Liddell, and Justice Suing terrify me, but C.J. Walker and Kyle Young are no slouches. I understand that Young is questionable with a concussion, but I think he's going to try to gut it out. Oral Roberts just doesn't have that depth. They have Max Abmas and Kevin Obanor. That's it. RJ Glasper likes to drive and get fouled. Kareem Thompson is a really good shooter, but I don't trust him to win this game for the Golden Eagles. If Kyle Young doesn't play, maybe, just maybe, I could see a world where Oral Roberts pulls off the upset. But even then, that's slim to none. I've got to go with the Buckeyes. Moving on now to Baylor Hartford. And I'll say this. No one has been able to stop the Bears' incredibly explosive offense thus far. But the Hawks do have a decent chance. They have a great defense. They've only given up 63.3 points per game. That's the 25th best mark in the nation. Tracy Carter is one of the best players in the nation in terms of getting into those passing lanes. Austin Williams is a good player. Miroslav Staffel's a good player. Hunter Marks is a good player. Hartford has a lockdown defense. That's why they won the AEC. But they're not going to be able to shut down Baylor. There's no way. They haven't faced anyone like the trio of Jared Butler, Masio Teague, and Davion Mitchell. They haven't faced a bench like Adam Flagler, Matthew Mayer, and Jonathan Chomwa-Chachua. Look, I'll say this. Out of all the 116 matchups, this is the one that has the best chance of ending in an upset. Because what stops a great offense? A great defense. Having said that, though, there's no way that the Hartford offense is going to be able to score against this great Baylor defense. I love Baylor. They're going to be an incredibly tough out. Hartford's not going to be the team to do it. Give me the Bears. Moving on now to Loyola of Chicago versus Georgia Tech. The biggest news of this game is that Sister Jean will be in attendance. I am not kidding. That makes my heart very happy. I said this on Friday. You can make the argument that this Ramblers team is better than the team that went on that magical Final Four run. This team has the best defense in the nation. They've only given up 55.5 points per game this year. The 18 team didn't do that. They weren't slouches defensively, don't get me wrong, but I don't think they're as good as this team defensively. Give Porter Moser a ton of credit. His system is one of the best in the nation. Cameron Crutway basically carries that whole team on his back. He has some help defensively from guys like Lucas Williamson and Marquise Kennedy, but offensively, it's all Crutway. Now, I'll say this about the Yellow Jackets. They have a bunch of different ways to beat you. It can be Moses Wright, it can be Jose Alvarado, it can be Michael DeVoe, and it can be Jordan Usher. That's going to be tough for a Ramblers team that hasn't had to deal with that in the Missouri Valley Conference. But, overall, I don't see how this Yellow Jackets team is going to be able to crack 65 against this Loyola defense. They're just not as good in totality as their individual parts would indicate. With Sister Jean on their side, there's no way that Loyola's going to lose this game. Give me the Ramblers. Moving on now to Tennessee, Oregon State. The thing that I love about the Volunteers is how balanced they are. They really have 7 guys that can beat you. Jaden Springer, Keon Johnson, Victor Bailey, John Fulkerson, assuming he plays. We don't know if he will. We don't know if he won't. Yves Pons, Santiago Vescovi, and Josiah Jordan James. There are very few teams in the nation that have the depth that Tennessee does. And I just don't see how Oregon State can beat them. I don't like Oregon State this year. I don't think they're that good. Do they have some decent players? The answer is yes. Ethan Thompson, Jared Lucas, and Warith Alatish. But they're not going to be able to hang with the Volunteers. There's no way on this earth that the Beavers win. This is going to be a rout. It's going to be a runaway. You're going to be able to turn the game off very quickly and pay full attention to the other games. Give me Tennessee. Moving on now to Oklahoma State Liberty. This is Cade Cunningham's moment. What can he do with the lights on bright? You take a look at the TV schedule. Loyola Chicago versus Georgia Tech is probably going to be over by the time Oklahoma State Liberty starts. They're a 6:25 start. The only game that could conceivably be going on is Tennessee, Oregon State. That's going to be a blowout. The entire sports world will be watching Cade Cunningham. What can he do under the bright lights? Will he solidify his status as the first overall pick? Or will he crash and burn and open up the door for someone like Evan Mobley, Jalen Green, Jonathan Kuminga, or Jalen Suggs? Do the Cowboys need to ride or die with Cunningham? No. They have guys like Avery Anderson, Caleb Boone, Isaac Likely, who kind of tailed off a little bit at the end of the season. It'll be interesting to watch how he plays. Matthew Alexander Moncrief, Rondell Walker, and Bryce Williams. It's not all on Cunningham's shoulders, but his performance is by far and away the biggest storyline of this game. Now he's going to have his hands full with the Flames. Richie Mckay, whose name reminds me of Rich Kotite. I don't like that. Has done a great job with Liberty. They have finished with over 20 wins in 6 of the last 7 seasons. In the last 3 years, they went dancing. They were guaranteed to be in last year's March Madness. That is a fact. And the scheme that McKay runs could be tough for the Cowboys. But I think Oklahoma State has the better roster. You take a look at Liberty, only 2 guys scare me. Darius McGee and Chris Parker. Oklahoma State has more guys. They're deeper. They're better. They have the best player. Give me Oklahoma State. I think Cunningham solidifies his first overall status. Moving on now to UNC Wisconsin. It was touch and go there for a little bit with the Tar Heels, but they finished on a high note. They made the big dance pretty easily. And they're a solid team. They're a well-rounded team. Armando Bacot, Caleb Love, Garrison Brooks, Dayron Sharp, RJ Davis, Kerwin Walton, and Leaky Black are all solid players. And Leaky Black has the best name out of anyone in this tournament. Let me just say that. But I don't like this matchup for them against the Badgers. I think the Badgers' defense is just too good. If you're going up against a great defense like Wisconsin, I want you to have a great offensive player. UNC doesn't have that. In fact, you can make the argument that the best two players in this game are both Badgers, Demetric Trice and Micah Potter. And when you combine them with Brad Davison, Aleem Ford, Nate Ruvers, Jonathan Davis, and Tyler Wall, I don't like UNC's chances here. I gotta go with Wisconsin. And I know I butchered Ruvers' name. I've heard it pronounced before. I just don't remember how it's actually pronounced. Nate, if you're listening, I'm sorry. Moving on now to Houston versus Cleveland State. There is no way on this earth that the Vikings will win this game. They match up terribly with the Cougars. They don't have the offense necessary to break through the Cougars' outstanding defense, anchored by guys like Quentin Grimes, Marcus Sasser, Dejan Giroux, and Tremont Mark. They don't have the defense necessary to stop the Cougars' offense. I'll throw Justin Gorham in there also when I'm talking about the offense. Double threat every night. I don't want to rain on Cleveland State's parade. They were by far and away the best team in the Horizon League this year. And they have a good player in Torrey Patton. And some other solid players. Trey Gomillion, Demoy Hodge, and Craig Bodian. But there is no way that they beat the Cougars. This is going to be a rout. Give me Houston. Let's get into a more even matchup now with Purdue taking on North Texas. All defense, no offense with these schools. I have the utmost respect for Matt Painter. I like him a lot. He's been with the Boilermakers since 2005 and has done a really good job with them. And I do like this Boilermakers team. Travion Williams, Jaden Ivey, Sasha Stefanovic, Zach Edey, Eric Hunter, and Brandon Newman are all very talented. But they could have their hands full against this great Mean Green defense. Let me tell you, they play defense as well as Mean Joe Green did. They only gave up 61.2 points per game this year. That's the 10th best mark in the nation. And they have some pretty good offensive players. Javion Hamlet, James Reese, Thomas Bell, and Zachary Simmons. But they don't have the depth necessary to hang with Purdue. Whatever the over-under is on this game, take the under. I don't care if it's 100. Purdue will never pull away in this one, but they will outlast North Texas. This won't be a rout. The Mean Green will make them work, but ultimately, Purdue will win. Moving on now to Clemson Rutgers. Every time I watch Clemson, I just get upset with them. I want them to be so much better than they are. They're an infuriating team. They have a great defense. One of the best defenses in the nation. They only give up 62 points per game. That's the 14th best mark in the nation. You know how many points they score per game? 65.3. They only have one good offensive player. Amir Sims. That's it. Defensively, they're outstanding. But offensively, they're infuriating. If you combine Clemson's defense with, Gonzaga's offense, you'd have maybe the best team in college basketball history. The thing is, though, Clemson has an offense that reminds you more of the offense that you see at your local YMCA. When you look at Rutgers, there are really only 3 guys you have to key in on: Ron Harper, Jacob Young, and Geo Baker. That's basically it. This isn't a great defensive team. I'd love to get more excited about this game since the Scarlet Knights are a local team, sorta, kinda. Piscataway isn't that far away from here. But I think this is going to be a snooze fest. These are 2 of the worst teams in the tournament. The 2 11 seeds that just lost are better than Clemson and Rutgers. All in all, I think Clemson's defense is going to be too much for Rutgers. I gotta go with the Tigers. Moving on now to San Diego State versus Syracuse. The Aztecs are another defense-first team, but they're at least competent offensively. They have 2 really good offensive players, Matt Mitchell and Jordan Shakel. I like those guys a lot. They're 2 of the better two-way players in the nation. Brian Dutcher has done an absolutely sensational job for the Aztecs. Took over for a great coach in Steve Fisher. And he's made a lot of Aztecs fans forget about him. Great job there. Speaking of great coaches, Jim Boeheim. Speaking of the Boeheims, Buddy. I feel like that's all I need to say about this Orange team. They're coached by a legend, and their best player is his son. I don't want to hear anything about nepotism. Buddy Boeheim earned his way onto the Orange. The guy's averaging 17 points per game. And I'll say this for Syracuse. They have a really good starting 5. Boeheim, Alan Griffin, Quincy Guerriere, Marek Dolezaj, and Joe Girard. This was one of the toughest games of the tournament for me to pick. Because Syracuse does have an offense capable of beating the Aztecs. But San Diego State's defense is so lethal. What are the chances that the Orange can do it with the lights on bright? Realize, you only got one chance. That's the beauty of March. Anything can happen. It wouldn't stun me if Syracuse won, but I've got to go with San Diego State. Give me the Aztecs in a very close game. Moving on now to West Virginia versus Morehead State. I talked about the Mountaineers a lot this year. They have an excellent offense. Miles McBride, Derek Culver, Taz Sherman, and Sean McNeil. But the Eagles have a really good defense. Anchored by Johnny Broome, one of the better two-way players in the nation. Devon Cooper and Skylar Potter are good offensive players. Morehead State has the defense necessary to beat WVU. But talent-wise, the Mountaineers are better. Bob Huggins is a million times better than Preston Spradlin. Top to bottom, the Mountaineers are better than the Eagles. I gotta go with WVU. The last game on today's docket is Villanova taking on Winthrop. Winthrop is a very sexy Cinderella team, and I understand why. Their depth is incredible. They go basically 11 deep. Pat Kelsey can put out whatever lineup he wants. He's not beholden to anything. Their offense is really good. Chandler Vaudrin, Adonis Arms, Charles Falden, and DJ Burns. Their defense is really good. The Eagles have the 78th best defense in the nation. They've only given up 66.8 points per game. They only lost one game the whole season. It was a 2-point loss to UNC Asheville. When you look at the Wildcats, maybe they have the more talented players in Jeremiah Robinson Earl, Justin Moore, and Jermaine Samuels. But keep in mind, Colin Gillespie is out. He was a big part of what Nova did. As good as Jay Wright is, he's going to have a tough time scheming around that. There's a reason that Winthrop ran roughshod over the Big South. They're a really, really good team. They're my Cinderella team for this tournament. And that starts with the typical 5-12 upset. You always get one. Give me Winthrop. Now let's go to Sunday's games. I will start with Colorado taking on Georgetown. The Buffaloes are one of the best defensive teams in the nation. Give Tad Boyle a ton of credit. He's been doing a really good job in Colorado for a long time. Offensively, they're led by a really talented player in McKinley Wright IV. They also have Jariah Horn and Evan Batty. I like this Colorado team. I hope you were staying up to watch their tournament games. They're a fun team to watch. And when you look at the Hoyas, they really don't have much business being here. I know they won the Big East. I get that. Give Patrick Ewing a ton of credit. The ghost of John Thompson was helping him. But I'm just not crazy about this team. I like Javon Blair. And Qudus Wahab, Jamorko Pickett, and Chudier Bile are all solid players. But Georgetown doesn't do anything great. I think the Hoyas are going to be run out of the building against this stout Colorado defense. I really don't like this matchup for them. Give me Colorado. Moving on now to FSU versus UNC Greensboro. You want to talk about the whole being greater than the sum of its parts? That is the Seminoles. MJ Walker, Raekwon Gray, Scotty Barnes, Anthony Polite, and Balsa Koprivica aren't great players. They're not awful, but they're not great. In Leonard Hamilton's system, though, they've combined for the 33rd best offense in the nation in terms of points per game. Just under 79. Now, some people will like that. Hey, look, they embody there's no I in team. They're a very selfless team. They're a very well-coached team. I get all that. But the Spartans are well-coached too. Give Wes Miller credit. He's led this team to 5 straight 20-win seasons. And the Spartans have the best player in this matchup in Isaiah Miller. A guy who has dominated the Southern Conference for the last 3 seasons. I love his maturity. He's not going to be fazed by the bright lights. If the Seminoles had a true defensive stopper, I'd like their chances a lot more in this game, but they don't. I think Miller is going to run roughshod here. In my biggest upset of the first round, I have UNC Greensboro beating FSU. I guess I buried the lead a little bit on Kansas Eastern Washington, though, right? Well, I guess you could have guessed that I'd pick the Jayhawks. I've defended the Jayhawks for a while. I think they are a talented team. I like Okai Agbaji, David McCormick, and Marcus Garrett. Christian Braun, Bryce Thompson, and Mitch Lightfoot are solid players also. Jalen Wilson is currently going through the COVID-19 protocol, so I have no idea what's going to happen there. That's why I didn't mention him. Now, I'll say this. The Eagles will make the Jayhawks work. This won't be a runaway. EWU has 5 players averaging at least 10 points per game. Tanner Groves, Kim Aiken, Tyler Robertson, Michael Meadows, and Jacob Davison. Give Shante Leggins credit. He's doing a good job with EWU. They have a really good offense, but Kansas has the much better defense. I'll take their defense over that offense any day of the week. Rock, chalk, Jayhawk. Moving on now to LSU versus Saint Bonaventure. One of the best matchups of the first round. LSU has the 8th best offense in the nation. They put up just over 82 points per game. Whereas the Bonnies have the 5th best defense in the nation. They only give up 60.4 points per game. Both of these teams have really good starting lineups. Cameron Thomas, Trendon Watford, Javonte Smart, Darius Days, and Andre Hyatt. Honorable mention to Mwani Wilkinson. Him and Hyatt split a starting spot this year. But the Bonnies have Kyle Lofton, Jaron Holmes, Jalen Attaway, Dominic Welch, and Osun Osunniyi. The thing that I don't like about the Bonnies is that their head coach, Mark Schmidt, played his starting 5 a lot. All 5 of those guys averaged over 32 minutes per game. Is that sustainable? Can this great Bonnies defense shut down this great Tigers offense? I think the answer is yes. The break will help them. It wouldn't stun me if LSU won, but I am going to pick Saint Bonaventure. Moving on now to Texas Southern versus Michigan. If Texas Southern wants to do the unthinkable and knock off the big bad Wolverines, they've got to cook at 100%. They did not cook at 100% yesterday. Michael Weathers and Jordan Carl Nicholas, 2 of their better players, shot a combined 5 for 18 from the field. They combined for just 14 points. You can do that against Mount St. Mary's. You can't do that against Michigan. Those guys need to step up. Jordan Gilliam needs to step up again. Give him full credit. He was the Tigers' second best player yesterday. He was in lockstep with John Walker the whole way. Walker dominated that game. But Gilliam was right there with him. It's got to be a complete effort for the Tigers to beat Michigan. But let's be honest. That's not going to happen. I'm not saying that Texas Southern isn't going to give it 100%. Of course they are. The simple fact is, they're just not as talented as Michigan. Guys like Hunter Dickinson, Isaiah Livers, Franz Wagner, Eli Brooks, Mike Smith, and Chaundi Brown are in a different stratosphere than any sextet of Tigers that you want to pull out. I don't want to rain on Texas Southern's parade. Give them credit. They gotta win under the bright lights. But they have no chance of beating Michigan. Juwan Howard's team is just too good. It's going to be a rout. Moving on now to Creighton versus UCSB. The Blue Jays are a very underrated, well-rounded team. They're really good offensively. Their starting 5, Marcus Zagorowski, Denzel Mahoney, Damian Jefferson, Christian Bishop, and Mitch Ballock all put up over 10 points per game. But their defense is solid too. All those guys are talented defensive players. Ryan Kalkbrenner, too. Give Greg McDermott a ton of credit for what he's done with Creighton. He's been there for a decade now, and for good reason. But the Gauchos are also a really well-rounded team. They have the 60th best offense in the nation in terms of points per game, 76.5, and they only gave up 62.8 points per game this year. That's the 20th best mark in the nation. They're led by 6 really talented players: Jaquari McLaughlin, Amato So, Ajari Sani, Miles Norris, DeVerl Ramsey, and Josh Pierre-Louis. You remember how I said that you always get a 5-12 upset? I think you're going to get 2. I think overall UCSB is better than Creighton. Joe Pasternak is doing a great job with that program. He's been there for 4 years, and they've had over 20 wins in all those seasons. Look, I like Creighton a lot. I've spoken about Creighton highly in the past, but in the spirit of the 5-12 upset, I have to go with the Gauchos. They're another one of my Cinderella teams. Moving on now to Alabama versus Iona. Let me just say that Iona shouldn't be here in the first place. The fact that the MAC let them into their conference tournament despite only playing 9 conference games, not playing for the entire month of January, is sickening. My buddy Jim went to Marist. They play in the MAC. He was rooting for Quinnipiac, Siena, Niagara, and Fairfield hard. And you know what? I was too. I mean, give Rick Pitino credit. He's in the big dance again. This is the 5th team that he's taken to the big dance. Boston, Providence, Kentucky, Louisville, and Iona. That is impressive. But again, I don't think the Gales should be here in the first place. I mean, it doesn't matter much in the grand scheme of things, because whoever won the MAC, assuming they would have gone up against the Crimson Tide anyway, would have gotten steamrolled. Nate Oates has done a sensational job with Alabama. They're always going to be a football school first and foremost, but you know what? Their basketball team is really good too. Iona's going to have no answer for Jaden Shackelford, Javon Quinterly, John Petty, and Herb Jones. It's going to be a rout. It's going to be a runaway. Roll Tide. Moving on now to Drake versus USC. If Drake is going to win this game, they've got to shut down Evan Mobley like they shut down Tyson Etienne. The Bulldogs' defense showed up yesterday in a big way. Wichita State shot just 34% from the field and 17% from beyond the arc. Drake was all over the place defensively. They had a great game plan. Let the lesser shockers kill him. Let Morris Udeze go off. Let Dexter Dennis go off. That's okay. We just need to contain Tyson Etienne. Etienne is by far and away their best player, dominated in the AAC. We've got to shut him down if we want to win. And they did. Etienne looked terrible. 0 for 6 from the field. That is inexcusable. Drake is going to key in on Evan Mobley just like they keyed in on Etienne. And the reality is, once Mobley's out of the equation, there's no Trojan that I trust to step up and lead them to victory. Taj Edey, Drew Peterson, and Isaiah Mobley are solid players, but they don't really scare me a whole hell of a lot. I think Drake is going to shut down Evan Mobley. I know that Mobley and Etienne are different players, but Drake threw all their attention at shutting down their opponent's best player. That's transferable to any opponent. I don't care if one's a guard and one's a center. You can double him on the catch, force him to give the ball up, and render him ineffective. Why do you think NBA teams with only one star usually don't win titles? It's because the opposing team knows to key in on him. Alright, we're not going to let this guy go off. Let his teammates go off. If we can limit this guy, we're going to win. That was the game plan that Drake had yesterday, and it worked perfectly. I think it's going to work perfectly again. Usually a play-in team does win a first-round game. I think that's going to happen here. Give me Drake. Moving on now to Iowa versus Grand Canyon. My father is going to be rooting hard for the Hawkeyes in this one. Not because his wife went to medical school at Iowa, but because Bryce Drew was a terrible coach for his alma mater, the Vanderbilt Commodores, and his first year with the Grand Canyon Antelopes, he gets them into the big dance. If it makes you feel any better, Dad, the Antelopes are going to have no answer for the excellent duo of Luka Garza and Joe Wieskamp. Jordan Bohannon will obviously get his as well. I mean, Asbjorn Midtgaard, Alessandro Lever, and Jovan Blacksher are really good players. There's no question. But they're no match for the Hawkeyes. How about them Hawks? Also, to answer your next question, Midtgaard was born in Denmark, and Lever was born in Italy. Moving on now to Yukon Maryland. An incredibly even matchup. Two really good coaches going at it. Dan Hurley and Mark Turgeon. Two really good defenses going at it. They're both in the top 46 in terms of points against per game. All in all, this game is going to come down to offense. And the Huskies have the best offensive player in this game in James Buffnight. The guy put up 19 points per game this year. He also has a good supporting cast in R.J. Cole, who's questionable with a concussion, but I think he's going to try to gut it out, and Tyrese Martin. Eric Ayala, Aaron Wiggins, Dante Scott, and Daryl Morsell are all good offensive players, but Buff Knight is really good. I love how he attacks the rim. I think that's going to be the difference in this game. Give me UConn. Moving on now to Virginia versus Ohio. This is another sexy upset. A lot of people think that the Bobcats offense can burst through that Cavaliers defense. I will say it's possible. Ohio has 5 players averaging over 10 points per game. Jason Preston, Dwight Wilson, Ben Vanderplas, Ben Roderick, and London McDay. People are using their noodle in picking Ohio. They're not just throwing a dart at this and saying, yeah, that's the upset. No. They're using their brain. I like that. And while it is conceivable that Ohio could win, I don't think it's going to happen. I like Virginia's experience. They have some guys that won a national title still on their team. I like their starting 5, Sam Hauser, Jay Huff, Trey Murphy, Kihei Clark, and Reese Beekman. And I do think their defense will be able to slow down Ohio. Give Jeff Bowles a lot of credit. He's one of the better up-and-coming coaches in the nation. But Tony Bennett, at this very moment, is where Jeff Bowles wants to be. I'll take the experience. It wouldn't stun me if the Bobcats won, but I gotta go with the Cavaliers. Moving on now to Oklahoma, Missouri. And truthfully, I just think the Sooners are much better than the Tigers. I'll take the trio of Austin Reeves, Davion Harmon, and Brady Manek over the trio of Xavier Pinson, Drew Smith, and Jeremiah Tillman. And when I factor in guys like Umoja Gibson and my boy Elijah Harkless, they're better than Mark Smith and Kobe Brown. Oklahoma has the better depth. They have the better coach. Nothing against Quanzo Martin, but Lon Kruger is better. Much like it would play out on the gridiron, the Sooners beat the Tigers. Moving on now to Norfolk State versus Gonzaga. There are 2 things that the Spartans need to do if they want to be the one in 26-1. The first thing is start Jalen Hawkins. Without him, App State would have easily won that game. Hawkins carried the Spartans yesterday. He had 24 points in 29 minutes. He came off the bench. The only reason he played a lot was because Keontae Chavis got in foul trouble early. I don't know why Chavis is starting over Hawkins. Hawkins is better anyway. I mean, Chavis does the little things better, but in terms of scoring, It's Hawkins, and it's not even close. They've got to start Hawkins. It's just that simple. The second thing is, when they're ready to put their foot on the throat of their opponent, they've got to do it. Norfolk State was up big in that game. They were up by 16 at the half. I think at one point they were up 18. And the Mountaineers came storming back. They even had the lead late. Then Devontae Carter hit his free throws. App State couldn't pull off the miracle after that. They're not going to have Gonzaga down 16 at the half. That's not going to happen, but if you sense that moment where you can seize momentum and really put them on the ropes, you've got to do it. But let's be honest. That's not going to happen. Gonzaga's too good. There's a reason they went undefeated. This is probably the best team that Mark Few has ever had. Corey Kispert, Drew Timme, Jalen Suggs, Joel Ayayi, and Andrew Nemhard. I mean, that's as good a fivesome as there is in college basketball. There's no way that Norfolk State is going to be able to beat them. None whatsoever. Gonzaga is going to win handedly. But I will say this. Chris Russo had Mike Francesa on the other day. It was a Mike and the Mad Dog reunion. Absolutely loved it. Grew up listening to those guys. Still listen to Doggy. It was great. They were talking about Gonzaga. They both said that Mark Few has to win this year or else. And I understand their point. Look, Gonzaga is in the tournament every year. Almost every year they get 30 wins, they're a 1 seed, and you have people saying this is the year. This is the year they finally do it. They finally win March Madness. The closest they've ever gotten was in 2017 when they lost to the Tar Heels by 6 in the Final Four after narrowly beating Northwestern, WVU, and South Carolina. They were miles and miles better than those teams. You wouldn't know it by the way those games unfolded. And if you look at this year, this may be Few's best team ever. There's no way you can confidently pick them to win the whole thing. Hey, look, an undefeated team. Yeah, I expect them to stay undefeated. I don't know. We say this every year. It's this big, bad Gonzaga team. This is the year that they finally prove everyone wrong. They never do. It's very tough to pick them confidently as a title winner. And if you want to say that Few has perennially underachieved, I get it. And if you want to tell me that you're sick of losing in March, with the talent that you have that's unacceptable, you're gone. I understand the frustration, but who are you getting that's better? Mark Few really built that program. Yeah, Dan Monson, in his second year, got him to the Elite Eight. You know what happened after that? He took the money and he went to Minnesota. He went to the Big Ten. Few has been loyal to Gonzaga his whole career. He's never coached anywhere else. Without Mark Few, no one knows where Gonzaga is. Unless you live in Spokane, Washington. Let me ask you something. Do you think that anyone else, whoever you want to name, would be able to do what Few has done with that program? 21 straight March Madness appearances? 6 30-win seasons? Your answer better be no. And also, let's be honest, Few would be out of a job for just a few seconds. Pun intended. Thank you very much. 1 million teams would be lining up to hire him. And I'm not talking just college. Some NBA teams may come calling. That's how great he's been at Gonzaga. If you're going to fire a coach that's going to be picked up in 2 seconds, that's a bad look. You want to say that Few's not an immortal because he's never won the big one? He shouldn't be mentioned in the same breath as guys like Coach K, Dean Smith, Bob Knight, Roy Williams, and John Thompson. You can make that argument, but that doesn't mean you should get rid of him. No, I couldn't get behind the Bulldogs firing Few. Moving on now to UCLA versus BYU. And I'd love to tell you how the Bruins can pull off the upset, but I don't see any way that they can. Johnny Juzang suffered a right ankle sprain yesterday. He's the best player that UCLA has. I don't see how they can win a game without him. I understand that Jamie Jaquez had the game of his life yesterday. He had 27 points. He was better than Juzang. But Juzang was still there, putting up 23 points. And even if he plays, he's not going to be at 100%. It's very difficult for me to picture a way that the Bruins can beat the Cougars without a fully healthy Juzang. I just think BYU is too good. Alex Barcelo, Brandon Averett, and Matt Harms are a really potent trio. BYU has the 35th best offense in the nation in terms of points per game. 78.7. And their defense isn't that bad either. They only give up 68.5 points per game. That's the 118th best mark in the nation. That's not bad. Mark Pope is doing a really good job with that program. It stinks for UCLA. They would have had a great chance of pulling off the upset if Juzang was fully healthy. But if you need overtime to beat a not that great Spartans team with Juzang playing 41 minutes and being fully healthy for all of them, how are you going to beat a better BYU team? BYU is better than MSU by far, not even close. With Juzang playing maybe 30 minutes at less than 100%. It's not going to happen. The Bruins aren't going to be able to pull off the big comeback again. Without Juzang, it's impossible. It just is. He's that important to him. I've got to go with BYU. Also, I would like to point out that UCLA's win yesterday made me 4-0 in my first 4 predictions. Believe it or not, I actually know a little bit about sports. The penultimate game to talk about is Texas versus Abilene Christian. And this isn't the most insightful thing in the world, but it's the truth. The Longhorns have the much better roster. It's not even close. Andrew Jones, Matt Coleman, Courtney Ramey, Greg Brown, Jericho Sims, and Kai Jones. The Wildcats can't compete with that. Look, when you look at their national rankings, you'll see a team that's in the top 45 on offense and the top 10 in defense. I get that. They had a really good season. Joe Golding should be proud. He finally has that program pointed in the right direction. But his trio of Colton Cole, Joe Pleasant, and Corian Mason can't hold a candle to that Texas roster. This is going to be a rout. I really like the Longhorns. They're going to be a tough out in this tournament. Hook 'em. The last game to talk about is Oregon VCU. This is a very well-rounded Ducks team. They're in the top 100 in offense and defense. Their starting 5 is lethal: Chris Duarte, Eugene Omorie, LJ Figueroa, Will Richardson, and Eric Williams. Again, Dana Altman assembled a really good Oregon team. And when you look at the Rams, they're a defense-first team. No surprise, since that's how they made the Final Four under Shaka Smart a decade ago. And they have some very talented defensive players. Nishan Highland and Vince Williams, who just so happen to be their 2 best offensive players. Highland is the best offensive player in this game, for whatever it's worth. Adrian Baldwin, Hassan Ward, Jimmy Clark, and Corey Douglas are all defensive stalwarts. But Oregon can be comparable to VCU's defense. VCU's defense is better, but Oregon isn't that far behind them. I think that's going to be the key factor in this game. I don't see another Cinderella story for VCU. I gotta go with the Ducks. If you want to check out my full bracket on Twitter, you can, at RealJacobValk. Until Sunday for my round of 32 preview, I am Jacob Valk saying, don't get used to me throwing 1, 2, 3 innings.